So going through that cash crunch and being so stressed out all the time, and
How stressed?
so stressed. I've only been stressed like this one other time in my life, but so stressed where I'm literally waking up and I threw up. Sometimes when things are going good, you kind of forget. You have to always constantly remind yourself of how to do it when you were broke. One of the biggest challenges is how do you manage that stress?
You can't just come to work just stressing everybody else out, because people feed off the leaders.
Oh yeah.
So my advice to entrepreneurs is jump in with both feet and don't have a back.
Welcome to the Josh and Eric Show. I'm Eric.
And I'm Josh.
And today we're going to do something a little fun. So we've got Jon Ryan over here with us, and he is the president of OFS. And he has a really cool story to tell. So can't wait to hear from that. And Josh over here, he's a part owner of it. And I think it would be a really cool episode to really learn and dive in to understand what your business is about, how you got to where you're at. And so this is kind of an American dream in my opinion. So you're living it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So me too, deep in it. But right, you're living it too, deep in it. So,
sometimes you don't know if it's the American dream or the American nightmare, but
that's right.
If there's more days in the week than it's a dream, then it's great, But sometimes you go, fuck, Can you say fuck on this thing?
Yeah, man.
Sometimes you just go, oh fuck, man, it's another, Sometimes you don't want to get out of bed, but ultimately it's worth it, and it has been this far.
Heck yeah, man.
I don't think it's necessarily for me. Long story short, Jon Ryan is in the lawn landscape business.
Facility services.
It's called Oklahoma Facility Services, aka OFS. Which one is it on?
It's right here.
It's right here, OFS, right? And
you picked the one day where I wasn't wearing OFS.
I'm representing your company better than you are.
I know,
right? So
and back up, like you didn't have time to plan. This is how we rolled this week. Was like, hey, this is gonna be a cool idea. Let's bring him in. He's gonna find out today. Come on in.
Well, we're going through a lot right now. OFS is going through a big strategic. We had a big 2024. We came in the year. We're like, hey, look, guys, we did $2 million in sales pretty much last 2 years. Let's get this thing off high center. Let's inject some capital. Let's go get some equipment. Let's go get some strategic employees, salespeople, and strategic ops guys. Let's go after some large accounts. Let's change the trajectory of where OFS is going. So him and I both agreed to it, and we were like, let's double the size of the company in 1 year. Well, we're finding out, just like anything else, we've grown that when you have a large goal, it takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of stress, a lot of mistakes. You got a lot of repositioning. So the reason why I wanted Jon on the show today, because our show's about business. It's about building a business, about the good, bad, and ugly of what can happen in a business. And right now, we're doing a lot of great things, and we have some things that we got to clean up. And that's one thing that we're running into. When you're growing a business, there's a lot of cash flow constraints, right? There's a lot of things when that cash flow gets tight, it makes you get smart real quick, right? And it also makes you recognize where the fat is. So,
and what happens if you don't get smart?
And then you don't have business. It's
right.
pretty simple.
You don't have business. Pretty simple.
If you don't get smart and you're not willing to make those changes, you just don't have a business, right? And it's kind of like evolution in the business cycle in the real world. If you don't get smart, business kind of weeds those people out naturally, right? And the people you see that have been in business a long time and they've been successful, it doesn't matter if you're a $500,000 company or $100 million or $1 billion. Those people they've made some tough decisions.
Yeah. You know what? And you know what? We brought Jon Ryan on this episode. We're going to give him the floor here for a little bit, okay?
Okay.
Yeah. We love you.
So,
well, talk it up. I mean, that's what you're good at. Don't get me wrong. I mean that in a positive way, but you're right. It does have a Darwinian effect of if you don't make those changes or you don't have the ability to pivot very, very quick, 100%. You don't last. And there's so many people that I remember this guy. I remember that guy 10 years ago. Well, what happened? I forget the name of his company. I don't recall. It was so long ago because they probably ran into those roadblocks or a growth adjustment or maybe a bad adjustment. Right now we're going through something good. It feels negative, but it's good because we're growing, but they didn't make it through. You know what I mean? And so when they don't make it through, they fail. They didn't reposition. They didn't have capital, or maybe they didn't account for a down year, you know what I mean? Or a down month or a down day or a down quarter, and they couldn't make it through, and that's, I know we're kind of jumping way ahead.
Too much, but there's a crazy statistic, isn't there, of like how many people actually fail?
And most people don't make it.
Yeah. So,
most people are pussies.
That's true.
You know what I mean? They don't want to show up early. They want to take off for their birthday. They have a baby and they take off 3 weeks. You can't do that if you're an entrepreneur. Let's just get that straight.
I agree with you 100%.
It's when you sign your name on that dotted line and you become president of a company and you take on that full responsibility and you go to bankers and you take on a lot of debt out, or you go to a family member and take on using their capital, you might as well just blow that. Your vacations, your birthdays, and your miscellaneous holidays, those are gone.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And if they aren't gone, you're not going to be in business very long. Or at least for the first few years. So John he's realizing that cash flow is everything. And without cash flow, you have nothing. Right? So, and things have gotten more expensive. Holy crap. If you're watching this show and you're in the lawn and landscape business, or you're in a business like Erickson and the dumpster business, and requires a lot of equipment, right? And a lot of people, the wages have gone up in the last 2 years significantly.
Everything has gone up.
Insurance is getting to the point where like
Insurance is
holy
insanity.
moly. And then they don't want, you can't file a claim because then it's going to go up even higher over for the
So
next
you're
3 or
eating
4
the
years.
cost. You're just eating out
You're
of pocket.
automatically paying for it. You're just financing it, right? And then your equipment.
And calculate that. You have to calculate that into your everyday business, man.
Oh gosh,
I
dang!
mean-
Hey, think about it. When you were buying trucks, your first roll-up truck, it was $167,000. Now that same truck is almost $300,000.
I know, dude. It's crazy.
When you got in the business, your mowers were like $10,000. Now they're $15,000. Right? Did you go up on your prices to offset that?
That's the question.
You know.
But
well,
hey,
and what does the market bear? Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off
go
there
ahead.
because
No,
I know
you're
you
good.
need to
You're
kind of lead in to get to the genesis. But when you do increase your price, what's that increase? What does the market bear?
Well, yeah, it's true. I mean, the reality is, and this is a good, fair point, right? Is a lot of times what happens in any of the service businesses, if you have guys that have their numbers down, right, and they know that they're making money, and this is your minimum rate that I'm going to accept, right, because I have to continue business. And then you have a lot of people, just like in your industry, that don't, and they don't know their numbers, and they're coming in there and they're not undercutting you, and they're not making any money, and you have to be able to withstand that. And maybe the market could only withstand 15% over your cost or whatever, right? So, but that's always a good, valid point to think about, right? Is what can the market bear in whatever industry that you're in?
And it's so tricky, And again, I know we need to go back to the genesis of how we all got here, but yeah, what the market can bear versus what you want to pay, or what you want your clients to pay, is wildly different, because they don't care if you have a brand new truck. They know that they're paying Joe Blow down the street that has a busted up Dodge 1500 from 2000. That he can mow those lawns for 40. Well, my price is, let's say, 57 for a small lawn. Well, why would they pay any different? They don't care if the grass gets cut, right? So
That's definitely a challenge.
I know
Well,
I
that's
see
what
it on
makes
the
America
paper.
America.
yeah,
That's right.
You know what I mean? It's
It is.
capitalism. If
Yeah.
you can, it keeps everybody somewhat honest. If only the big boys were in business, we'd be mowing lawns for 150,
exactly.
They could jack it up.
right?
on the
So
same
it's
page.
actually the way the system's designed is the best thing for the consumer.
Oh yeah,
It makes us try to do the best job for the least amount of money,
yeah.
Yeah.
and weed out the small guy.
There's no better setup in the entire world than capitalism. There is no. It
100%.
keeps people honest. It keeps you honest. You know what I mean? It creates that extra effort. When there's other socialism and things of this nature, where everything's kind of pre-planned, it fails. You know what I mean?
100%.
When you have to go stand in line to get your shoes for the year or the potatoes or whatever the case may be, capitalism is the only thing that has never failed, because it creates people that are smart. You know what I mean? From reading
Innovation. It breeds innovation.
it breeds innovation. Absolutely, it does. And that's when you do get smart and you can pass along those cost savings to your customers and be a little bit better. You might not be the cheapest, but you're the most efficient.
Yeah.
But to that point, Joe Blow or Josh Carley 2.0 comes along 5 years later and goes, hey, I can do a little bit better than him. It creates that sense in your own mind of, oh, I haven't been looking at this. I need to change it. Or you don't. You know what I mean? So it's interesting.
Innovation, man. Innovation.
So let's talk about how you got here.
Yeah, so the
how did I meet John? Let's hear this.
Well, I mean, it's kind of a cool story. Like I said, I think that's for me is what this is all about. For me, I like to give back, and there's different ways to achieve your goals. Everybody has a different path. Some people get a golden spoon, right? And their daddy's got a badass business, and he works his way into it, and maybe it works out, maybe it doesn't. Some people are right there riding the line, you know what I mean? And they just position themselves. Some people just get damn lucky. You may hit the Powerball, right? Whatever. But these situations like you're in right now, and like how I got into the position that I'm in, and how the position that you got in are all very similar. But I want to hear your story. I think everybody wants to hear your story and how you are and where you're at, where you came from, right? Because we grew up together.
Mm-hmm.
Where you came from and what your mentality was to where you're at now in life and where you're thinking, where you're going.
You know, it was crazy. The whole story is nuts how Josh and I met, the path there, where we're at today. And again, for anybody listening, Eric and I did grow up together, oddly enough. Our neighborhoods were only 1 mile apart. You were on 96, I was on 86 in Country Briar, and you were over there. So we've known each other for a long time, and how we all kind of circled back is just the longest story ever. It's way too boring for this podcast, but kind of my genesis was my dad and all my extended family all own their own businesses their whole lives growing up. My grandpa, my grandparents on either side, and most all of them went into business ownership themselves. So when I was, growing up, I was very left-brained. I still am very left-brained, in terms of I make my way as an accountant, or I did. That was my education. But I had a different level of well-roundedness due to the fact of growing up how I grew up. And I grew up in Owasso, say that, so that was not Owasso, Oklahoma, but raised more in North Tulsa, where my dad's business was, where my uncle's business was. I was working in salvage yards in the summers, working in muffler shops and this, that, and the other. So that creates a different level of well-roundedness in your brain of, yes, I do make my living, or did at the time, after I got out of college, being an accountant. But I had a brain where I could talk to just about anybody, from the ground floor to a CEO that makes $300 million a year. So it made me always strive and want for more. I always wanted more. I said, I'm tired of being a staff accountant. Either I want to be the next thing, the fixed assets senior lead. I want to do sales because I can talk to everybody. They call me all the time anyways. So anyway, I kind of went the typical Oklahoma route. I went, 4 years college, Oklahoma State University, degree in finance and a minor in accounting, got out and went into the oil and gas business, which if you're from Oklahoma, that's kind of what you're expected to do, in one of the major construction businesses, natural gas or oil and gas. So I did that for about 5 years and made my way as an accountant, and worked my way up and had my trials and tribulations, but also met a lot of really great people along the way. So one guy I still call my business mentor. He was the CFO of the oil and gas business I worked for. And then, long story short, I left the oil and gas business to go into work for a trucking company because a lady I used to work for hired me on there, and it was my first break, as I call it. I went from staff accountant to a controller of what could have been a multi-million dollar business. At the time, it was challenging, but it was a great first challenge. It was very, very stressful, but it was my first break where you're making a little bit more money. You got a lot more responsibility. I had 8 to 12 people reporting to me directly as the controller of this trucking business. And it was just a nightmare. I'm telling you. I mean, Josh Carley knows kind of the story, but it was the biggest nightmare you ever walked into. Not only from a hostile work environment, got along with the owner and things of that nature, but walking in there and just looking around the whole office and going, I think I fired 5 people in my first 2 weeks because they weren't cut out. I can't give every detail because people might hear it, but I walked in and go, you hired these 4 gals from where? And you're paying them what? And they do
Are they
what?
Hooters? Were they Hooters gals?
It was Hooters at Twin Peaks. It was one or the other.
I knew it. Go ahead. Sorry.
But so, to continue on that path, I was kind of getting burnt out. It was it was hostile. Although I turned the ship around when I was there, and me and the owner got along great, and he thought I was, God's gift to the earth, and I wasn't. I was just practical. I just said, we're blowing all this money. The company's not capitalized right. We're trying to beef up all this stuff, and it became too toxic for kind of one person to stay there. So I started looking around to get out. So where I started looking, I don't even think I was on the job market, to be honest with you, but I had someone call me from an accounting staffing firm based in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and they said, hey, I got this really interesting deal. Okay. I mean, my phone was ringing all the time. They said there's this, and they didn't know how to explain it, which is now it's so ingrained in my brain. They said it's kind of a construction company, but they rent equipment. And they shared a yard with Miller Trucking. They were saving some money. Then they moved out in West Tulsa, and they doubled their sales in a year. They went from whatever it was to $1 million. And they said, but I don't really know how to explain it, but they're looking for an accountant or a CFO or controller or whatever the case may be. And I said, okay. Well, that company was Toughbox, which Josh Carley was owner, or, wholly owned at the time. And I said, okay, let me go out there. And of course, the hiring manager, the operations director at the time, was Jeff Erickson, who was a grade ahead of you and I and I watched
Fair
some
enough.
public schools.
Yep.
So it's kind of weird. You walk out there and you
Was it
don't
a
know.
good first impression? Was it a good first impression?
Well, if you asked Jeff, I think he would say no. He said I was way too quiet. I was way too close to the chest or close to the vest. And he goes, we knew we needed your skill set, but we didn't see that great big giant enthusiasm. And I told Jeff, I said, I'm not the guy that's going to stand on the desk in an interview and jump on and go, I can't wait, I'm going to pump it. Although internally,
Just go get this.
Yeah, I couldn't see that out of you, man.
Yeah, I know, right? We know each other since we were like 10.
Yeah.
Although I felt that way internally, you're in an interview, so you're not going to go like, oh, we're going to kill it, this, that, and the other. I was just like, yeah, great. And we had a great interview. Anyway, the next day he called me and per Jeff, you guys know Jeff, he made me an offer at the time and I agreed to it. And I said, what do we need to do now? And he said, come on. And so I started the following Monday.
Sounds about right.
It was Monday. It was March 6th, 2017. I remember it was like it was yesterday. And it was, freezing cold out. But anyway, that's a long impetus leading up to
But you missed a big part here.
what?
And you know
What is
about
it?
this part.
What is it?
It gets great. So, you did have your resume out. Because I had your resume on my desk through LinkedIn or somebody.
Uh-huh.
Right? So I
Oh, the staffing agency?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
you had a
God.
kerfuffle with the staffing
So,
agency, didn't
I
you?
have Jon Ryan's resume on my desk. I have a stack of resumes. Jon Ryan was one of many. Well, the staffing agency somehow figures out I need some counting. The company's called Accounting Principles. Right? And some lady walks in and says, hey, somehow, I don't know how, but they say, hey, we're a staffing agency and we specialize in finding people, highly qualified CPAs, accountants, finance people, etc. I was like, yeah, perfect. I was like, I'm actually looking for that. I didn't sign any contracts. It did nothing. I have a stack of resumes, right? I said, well, send me over your agreement. Well, next thing you know, I've already reached out to John.
Before you
Right.
signed the agreement?
Yeah. I reached out to John with Jeff.
But you signed the agreement?
No, I did not sign the agreement.
Okay.
No agreements were ever
Just making
signed.
sure.
And that is valid because I was there and I was taking over the book. So
So Jon Ryan, I was living in Florida at the time. Jeff interviews John, right? Well, next thing you know, he gets another call from Accounting Principles, and
Hey, I found you a gig.
yeah, and oh, by the way, you already interviewed him, and we sent him over there. I was like, no, I already have the stack of resumes, and they sued me for $15,000.
So the 15,000, it was in between 12 and 15 grand is what they wanted. That was their finder's fee for supplying, for supplying
Yeah.
a controller level type accountant.
Yeah.
But what Josh is saying is 100,000% correct because this was after I took the job. Another staffing firm called me and said, hey, or they messaged me on LinkedIn or Facebook or
They
something.
found your resume on LinkedIn, and
Yeah.
they just pushed it my way.
Yeah, and they said, hey, we got this.
Josh
great-
Carnley is blacklisted at Accounting Principles.
No, I actually.
is what it
The
says.
funny thing is, the lady I was talking to was they had a council, and the council was like, "Look, Josh is right. You're not going to get anything out of it." I said, "I will go down." I didn't.
If you didn't sign the agreement, you didn't sign
it wasn't
the
even
agreement.
signing the agreement. I didn't even tell her I wanted anybody or send anybody over. She was sending people over like the next day. I didn't even want any. I was like, I'm gonna make your agreement. Next thing you know, I got people walking to my door. I'm here for an interview. I'm like, well, I'm like looking through my stack of resumes. I'm like, I don't see you on here. How'd you get here? They're like, well, Accounting Principles sent us over here. I'm like, what?
That is strange.
You know what I mean? The next thing you know, one of the people walked in the deal was Jon Ryan.
And,
We already made contact with him.
Jeff did, and to make it even weirder, Accounting Principles was on the 3rd floor of the Southern Hills Tower, and I was on the 2nd floor, so I knew that lady for years because she'd come down and go,
I didn't know that.
yeah. So and again, they weren't doing anything wrong.
No.
Really, they were trying to do their
They're
job.
They're a good company.
Yeah, they are. So I don't say anything bad, but they would come down every now and then, or they'd see me in the lobby at the deli or whatever and say, hey, I think we got a job. Maybe you can interview for it. They were trying to promote you, but they were also trying to make their fee. But what he said is 100% correct because we had multiple people reach out, and Josh didn't know me from a hole in the ground at the time. Jeff did. And so then I get hired, and all of a sudden you see an invoice for 12 grand or 15,000. And I'm going,
15,000.
yeah, $15,000 for a placement fee. And we're sitting there, and I had his back 100%. I didn't know. I knew him for a week, 2 weeks, whatever, 10 days. I don't know. And the whole thing was, I was like, you're right. These people are trying to goose you for a lot of money. And this was back in the day. I'm talking back in the day when we were splitting our office and yard with another company at the time, which was one of his old companies, where literally we had to go, oh, hey, it's March. Tough Box, we'll put the paper and toner in the printer this month. We'll pay the $200. Oh, it's April. Aim to please. You have to pay for the toner and the
Yeah.
phone bill.
Been there. Yeah.
You think we're joking. We're not.
Oh, I hear
and
you.
the company in 2016 or in 2015 did what a first year company does, not much. 2016 did 1 million. In 2017, I'm sorry, excuse me, we did 2 so we had 100% growth. But we were so conscientious on cost. That was a real factor.
Well, when you're not
Well-
making any money,
Well, hang on. Let's back up. So let's catch up here. So,
Oh, I'm sorry. So
no, you're good. Let me,
so I get there.
let me rephrase.
Yeah.
Let me catch everybody up. So, basically, we grew up together. He went his separate path. He went to school, went to college, then started moving his way up, and he's landed at Tough Box by chance, and already had a kind of a kerfuffle at the beginning of it, right? And so now you started there at Tough Box, and what happens from there?
So I started there at Tough Box, and there was at the time there were 6 partners, and one eventually. This kind of folds into my story a little bit, but so it was the first time ever.
there was almost 2 groups.
Yeah, it was
There
like 3 and 3.
That group and then me.
Yeah,
That's how it was.
it felt 3 and 3. Well, at the time I was an owner, but it felt 3 and 3 of like there's them and then there's us. But to start that out, it was the first time I'd been there. Maybe it was because I don't know what it was. Josh lived in Naples, Florida at the time, and he had come up a few times, but I felt this instant bond with him. Jeff I had known for a long time, but me and Josh, for some reason, and I'm speaking on behalf of myself, you can say something different. I felt this instant bond, friend bond, business bond, all that stuff of we had 2 different brains. He was way more sales oriented. I was way more maybe numbers oriented, but we had the same goal where we wanted to be. The path we took to get there was a little bit different, but it was like day one, we just connected.
Yeah.
At least that's how I felt.
Yeah.
We talked about real estate. We talked about how to get the container business there, whatever. So leading into that bond, it was the first time I'd worked at a place and really felt, at the time I was not an owner, but felt like I took ownership of what I was doing. And so not only did I come in and change some things that people didn't like, we had some salesmen there that were scooting around the system a little bit, and I said, we can't do any
Imagine
scooting
that.
anymore. Yeah, right.
We've had some salesmen over there, didn't we?
Fuck. Well, the odd thing was feeling that sense of ownership and that sense of not owning it at the time, but still going, this is not right. It might be okay. It wasn't right. And Josh lived in Florida at the time, and I started making changes without asking him because he had an implicit trust in me because he knew.
Well, we were talking every day about 4 times a day.
We talked every day, hours. And I mean, Monday through Friday, he'd call me. One time he called me I remember this like it was yesterday. One time he called me by accident at like 5 a.m. And I keep my work phone on right by my bed. And I answer, what's going on? What's wrong? And he was in Florida. I thought maybe there's a hurricane. He said, I butt dialed you. But that's why you're going to be an owner because you answer at 5 a.m. and no one else does. So anyway, I started taking all this ownership because he trusted me, and the salesman didn't like it. I said, well, what you're doing, and Josh would call me and goes, hey man, the salesman said this and they're pissed off or whatever. And he said that, you're hindering their performance. And I said, I'm not hindering their performance. I'm trying to increase it because they're skirting the system. They're not really making their sales. They're going half-assed and trying to cut the customer a deal and things of that nature. So anyway, to continue that, feeling that sense of ownership and that bond kept growing and growing over that first couple of months and whatever it was. And I felt this, I've never felt so at home before, where I was literally, family and relationships and all that stuff aside, I was outside of accounting. I started selling like crazy. And I was selling on Sundays, Saturdays, Monday, mornings, noon, night, working that late, knowing what my competitor was doing at the time. And then again, it's kind of like what you said.
One time I pull up on the lot, and John's our accountant, right? I said, we had partners that were CPAs. So like 15 days of the following month, that freaking financial package was in that inbox. My phone was ringing at 5 a.m. You got 5 minutes in that financial reporting package in your inbox. And then usually by then, they had about 4 people look at it, and these guys are high-end CPAs. These guys are smart.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, you're missing this, you're missing that, you're missing this. And they're like, are you going to get your accountants under control, or do I need to come in there? That's how they talk. I'm like, well, I got it. And then some of it I didn't know how to fix. I'm not an accountant. You know what I mean? So I'm like, John, work with Amanda. Get this fixed immediately. But one time I pull in the yard, he's an accountant. We had these big old forklifts. I see this forklift driver. I look up there. I was like, our accountant's moving our containers? He's out there selling and delivering containers.
Hey man, you
I was
gotta do
like,
what it takes.
He got it. He's gonna work out here.
Yeah.
And that kind of goes back to the genesis of my dad raising me and my parents, is because I was around cars my whole life. And even when I was not able to drive, I was 12, 13 years old, We had to. So it was an odd thing. I could operate equipment along with doing what I was doing. And they think, well, shouldn't you be some big hillbilly wearing, overalls and stuff like that? And I'm like, I'll go drive that damn forklift if I need to, or I'll go get the power washer and, clean whatever I need to be.
And we did.
And we did, because we had to. And that was starting a business. He had already started it. But, to kind of bridge that gap a little bit, I was pushing myself the hardest I've ever pushed myself in my life. And
Until now.
Yeah. And then I think, that was recognized a little bit. And to kind of answer your question on where we got to where we were, it was the stars aligned. It was whatever you want to call it,
So did he give you ownership, or what happened?
Exactly. So we had one sort of silent partner, so to speak, that really he served a purpose at one point in time, but was true blue silent partner. And so the other partners were like, hey, it doesn't make sense anymore to have you involved and own the amount that you own and have zero influence. Why don't we buy you out? It's a headache. And the guy said, sure. When I won't repeat his name, but he didn't need to own part of it or anything like that. So when those shares were bought out, they came available. And through Josh's generosity and, this probably has never, well, it has happened since, but through Josh's generosity and just the way things aligned, they offer those shares for sale to current owners and to me, who was not an owner. And so that was kind of, almost, it happened so fast. It was within about a year. So when those came available, I did everything in my power to there was 20 shares open. So 20% of the company at the time. And, Josh got back what he wanted and there was a few left over and I grabbed everything I could. And call it smart, dumb, whatever. I leveraged somebody else's money to get those shares, knowing that they would get paid off.
I think we owner financed you.
Yeah.
So what happened is
do you say names on here?
No, you can.
So Dave Johnson came to me with Josh and said, listen, there's 12 open. Josh bought back 8 to shore up his majority ownership. There's 12 open. I said, give me all 12. I want them right now. Well, Jeff Erickson owned 8 points on the deal. And he said, well, I can't. And he told Josh, he didn't tell me. He said, I can't own less than John. He's the new guy, which is kind of silly, but I get his point too. Yeah. So he bought 2, his parents loaned him the money or whatever the case was at the time. So there's 10 left.
How much were they?
10 grand a piece.
10 grand a piece. Okay.
And
food for thought for later.
Well, the neat thing about it is when I sold those initial shares to the guy I bought the shares back, I had to buy him back 3 times, 3x.
Ouch.
And it was only 1 year later.
Ouch.
And he's a smart guy too. He's a CPA by trade. He's like, this is what they're worth. I'll sell them to you. And he was like, here it is. I remember writing him the check on his front of his hood in downtown Tulsa. I was like, God dang it. But he served his purpose, and I was okay with it.
It paid off over time, and it takes
sounds
time
like
to
all of them have been pretty generous. Kind of a stars aligned system, man.
Well, it just shows you,
fate.
to put it in perspective. If you show up and do the right thing and put the right time in and the right effort, and you go above and beyond, there's going to be things that are going to be extended your way.
I mean, that's a great
People
point.
are going to recognize that, and that's what we did. John showed up on time. He was doing things that we didn't hire him to do, aka operate forklifts, make extra sales. Show up early, stay late, go above and beyond in every aspect of where we were at that business at that time, right? Filled in a lot of gaps, to be honest with you. I didn't have to hire a few people because...
You were in Naples.
I was in Naples. I mean, I was flying back a lot too, but...
Well, he did, but, covering everything that wasn't even my job, and I'm not patting myself on the back now, but it was like I was doing operations, dispatch, the logistics, the trucking, working in the office, working out of the office.
Fixing problems that weren't even in the accounting field. So... Long story short, we recognized as an ownership group, I was like, hey, look, I need somebody like this on my team. He's going above and beyond. I'm not here every day. My wife was in medical school in Naples. I can't be there. My whole family's in Florida. I was like, I need somebody like this I can trust. And I do trust him because we were talking every day, like you and I do, and you and I do, like all the time. And I was like, I tell you what, let's buy our existing partner out. He's already willing to buy the shares out. And then I will, as a company... He goes, you were going to owner finance him. You believe in it. I don't know who this John guy is. I was like, I will take it on my shoulders. We'll owner finance him. Because John, at the time, he just came off of another job. And he was upfront and honest. He was like, hey, look, I don't have a lot of capital. Because I'll take every share you can give me. I said, perfect. Here's your share cost. You're going to have to pay me back. Here's your terms and conditions. Well, for John, this is what happens when you go above and beyond and the stars align really quickly. So continues to put in the effort. I move back. We build this thing to a beast, right? And he continues to put the effort in, and it gets bigger. Well, next thing you know, our phone's ringing.
Hey, let me buy you out.
But let's big publicly traded company. Next thing you know, phone's ringing all the time.
Yeah.
Well, we realized that we weren't worth as much as we thought we were worth because we were doing business lines that these companies didn't want to buy. So we went in there and made some massive changes overnight. Like, boom, stop this.
So let me make sure I understand this. So, pretty cool story. Started, weren't an entrepreneur, positioned himself into a place, and hard work, dedication, stars align. You're surrounding yourself with entrepreneurs in that mindset, right? Not a bunch of capital in his pocket. Hardly any, just like me. I didn't have nothing, right? A couple times in life, but we won't go there. And positions himself, works hard at it. And the American dream is alive and it's still alive today, right?
Yeah,
But
exactly.
you can manipulate the things that are around you, right? You can choose who you're around, right? You can choose what you spend your time and how you spend it and how hard you work, right? And you're no genius. I'm not a genius. You're not a genius,
I'm for
right?
sure not.
But at the end of the day, it boils down to hard work, man. Like I said, and that's why I think it's a hell of a cool story, right? To how you even got started, and then you just continue to. And then you're already surrounded around entrepreneurs, right? And then we'll continue on with the story, and it gets better and better.
Well, it gets better because, and then we'll real quick go back into OFS. But this is how cool this story is. So he comes in 2 years later, right? 2 years later, we build this thing. I come back. I'm back from Florida. My wife's graduated. I'm back. I'm like, we got to cut. We had this thing called rent to own. They didn't want to buy rent to own. Boom, we cut it. This thing was making us a pot full of money. Like 20, 30%, 40%, month over month.
So did somebody evaluate you and they were like, here's what you're worth and here's why?
We had
And you guys were smart enough
three
to.
publicly traded companies evaluate us. I was talking to all three.
Well,
And they gave you the groundwork to go, here's what I need to work on, right?
They
to get the
basically
best
said-
evaluation I can get.
No, they didn't really tell us that. We just knew what they were all
Well, based
three-
on their numbers and
Yeah.
what they graded you.
Exactly. So I
Yeah.
was like, we got to cut this, cut that.
you say 3, but I think it was 6 over time that had come in and tried to buy us. And, it was never, we've talked about this, it never made sense until the very last one.
Yeah.
Because we were too small, so they wanted to cut us out. Well, then you start growing like this, but we take on a lot of debt, so they want to devalue you because you have debt and it hurts your margins. And so it was every big Eric that you can think of that came to Tulsa and took us to dinner and paid for, I couldn't tell you how many bottles of
at
wine.
Riverside Jones Airport in a private jet, and they'd be like, I'd get there and I wouldn't tell them I'm the owner. And I'd be like,
So you just driving them around?
Yeah, they're like, so where's this Josh guy at? I'm like, I'm right here, baby.
Yeah.
And I would mess with him too. I'd wear like old wrinkly shirts and stuff and just mess with them and
That's
have fun with it.
hilarious.
But so we built this business up and we get all of we cut some business lines, slim down, get our EBITDA multiples up, our EBITDA numbers up, and boom, we got an offer that made sense. And
How long ago was it from when you started?
2
to
years.
To that point.
Yeah, it was less than 3 years. It was we sold the business in August 2019. So, and that was a whole other deal. He and I were both
Took
on
us a year and a half to sell it.
Yeah, we started that February. It took us just from talking to people over a year and a half. But even when we engaged with the people that we wanted to sell with, it took like 8 months.
Yeah, we thought we had it sold to somebody else.
Yeah.
I was like, this person's the right person. And then they backed out last second. And then I was like, well, the whole time I was running parallel, right? So the neat thing about this whole story, we go back to OFS, but to put this thing in perspective, he goes from not owning not anything, operating a forklift, going from a job he hated, to gaining shares that he didn't have to pay for, to never paying one dime of those shares back, to selling a company and taking those shares, because those were his shares, right? And putting
He
a
just had
pot,
a debt on him.
putting a pot full of money in his pocket, paying us back, and walking off. He looked like a genius.
I had to satisfy the debt, but I'm telling
get
you, when
it.
you talk about stars aligning and leveraging other people's money to get into it, because there's a legitimate offer there. And, you didn't luck out, but then that happens. And to his point, I looked way smarter than I am because I'm not that smart. It just happened. And I was like, how you, like a snake's going through the sand. I was kind of going like this. When it happened, I go, opportunity. Fuck, it's right there. Take it.
Well, this is why I asked earlier. So this will answer the question. So earlier I asked him, how much did he buy those shares for, or leveraged money? And you said $10,000 a share.
10 a
right?
share. Yeah, with 4% interest.
Yeah, at 4% interest.
Yeah,
Right?
'cause
So
it's
how
just-
much did you sell those
We can't
shares
tell you
for?
this. We can't tell you that. Stay tuned. We can't tell you.
No, we don't ever talk about that.
Okay,
So that's
okay.
one thing. That'll be
So
maybe
he
the
made out
last.
like a bit, and we just don't know how much.
He made out like a. He looked like a. I told Ashley. I went home that night. I told my wife. I was like, that had to probably be one of the best deals I've ever seen somebody make. Still to this day, because you go into a company with nothing and you come out 2 years later with a lot,
Yeah,
right? And I was like,
that's hilarious.
this is
Well,
a
good for
freaking-
you, man.
Yeah, now he's getting a different perspective because now he's like, okay, what do we do? We sold
Yeah.
this company. What do we do? He's like, hey,
What's the next step?
Let's go leverage some of our customers and figure out what because we had good relationships. He had a great relationship with one of our large customers, Walmart. And he was like, what do we do? He's like, let's lawn mow. I was like, lawn mow? I fucking hate mowing.
Yeah,
And that's what they needed at the time. So then that's when we started OFS. And I was like, hey, look, you be the president of it now. This is your time to run it. I trust you.
Mm-hmm.
And now he's getting the full scope of the president.
Fuck. That's where his gray hair's coming from. Past couple years.
When you level up, you move into these different positions. It's funny because when you work for people, you work for somebody. You have a perspective of what the vice president, the president, the manager, all these people do until you get in that seat.
well, let me tell you something interesting. I was reading it was a quote. I can't remember off the top of my head or where I read it, but the stress level doesn't really change at the level that you're at. And you say 100 million, 200 million, 300 million, it's still stress, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the stress level doesn't really change. It's just stress and how you deal with it, right? So that's kind of the mindset that we take over here on the services and rental side is, I'm willing to continue to take on the willingness and the ability to take on the next task. Stress level is going to stay the same as long as you believe in yourself and keep taking it to the next level. The dream's alive, baby.
It really is. And this
Dreams
probably
alive.
goes into, I know you're probably going to ask these questions, but that is the thing is if you can withstand it, not many other people can. And if you put yourself on the line every day and all that stuff and you believe in it, it's going to pay off and it does. I've seen it firsthand myself. And then to Josh's point, starting over is a task in and of itself and then changing your ways. But you look back and you go, okay, back in 2017 when I was becoming an owner and this, that, and the other, your problems, you were kind of splitting your problems really. And now it's like you have to own a lot of them. So your stress is a lot different. But then year over year, you look back and go, okay, that was my old stress. Now what's the new one?
Mm-hmm.
And it's very tricky. But anyway, to kind of go back, I know I'm probably speeding this up a little bit.
There's something we haven't talked about here.
What's that?
And I was sitting here, just sitting here thinking about this. You started this. You're about a couple years in it. You're stressed out to the max. John called me the other day. He's like, dude, this growth is just stress because he's one of those guys, a perfectionist, right? He just got married, right? He just told me just a second ago he got married, put his dog to sleep, and is growing and his cash flow is constrained. And he's had to go on his honeymoon in the peak season of his mowing season because that's what you do when you get married, right?
Mm-hmm.
You started over here. You had a baby, right? No money, and your company was going bankrupt.
Yep.
And you quit your job. The only secure source of income, and you can't work for me, and you on a couch.
You fucking sucking toilets.
And your wife knows that you're struggling on your existing business, and you go in there and tell her that, hey, I know you're pregnant, and we're gonna quit. I'm gonna quit my job, and I'm gonna go work for this guy sucking toilets.
Pretty much.
And then for me, I had a full-time career. I had a baby before I was married. I had my back against the wall. I had the same similar story. I had all these life events, and then we went all in. Kicker is you just go all in. There's not any good time. My grandpa always says, son, there's not ever a good time to get married, to die, to get sick, and have a baby.
There ain't no good time for anything.
There's not any good time for any of that crap,
Yeah.
right? And you just got to do it. It's part of life, but you have to juggle all this crap.
It's tough. I've seen you juggle a lot and you've taught me a lot and I've had some other good, mentors and things. But when you go all in, a week, 10 days or whatever, and you put your dog down and then you have to have a rehearsal and a wedding and then, you're leading into the summer months, which is hot and you're growing like crazy and then you're trying to remove yourself a little bit too. It was one of the most challenging times of my entire life because then you got to show up every morning at 7, 8 or 8 a.m., whatever it is, with a smile on your face and act like nothing's wrong. How do you do that? It eats your insides. It kills you. But you do it, and then you get through it, and you move on, and you're tougher because of it. But it was very
Now you got
challenging.
this thing called a wife, and she wants to spend time with you.
Yeah.
Because you just got married, and you're getting home late.
Yeah.
And when you are home, you're looking at her but you're thinking about lawn care.
Hey, I've talked about this in some of our past podcasts, so I'll tell you as a piece of advice, right? Is make sure you set clear expectations at the front, right? Especially like for me, I didn't know what to expect as far as business and what it took me time wise, right? I thought, like probably anybody else in my shoes, I was like, in 3 years, I'm going to be shitting in tall cotton and I'll have all the free time in the world. And you know what I'm saying? and in one way or another, that kind of translated to the wife, right? Because I didn't really know. And that was what I had envisioned, but that's not reality. So I didn't do a very good job of setting expectations. So my advice to you is make sure she understands the full scope of where you're trying to go and what the effort it's going to take is.
And don't sugarcoat it.
Yeah, don't sugarcoat
You
it.
just, because your ride or die is right there next to you. She's going to see the pain you're going through. She's going to see the happiness that you come home and you have a smile because you land a big contract, right? And she's going to see that you just got your financial statement and you killed it that month. Or you are like, oh gosh.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like you are right now.
Mm-hmm.
So she's going to, your partner, guy, girl, whatever, is going to be right there with you through the ups and downs. Like
It's a girl. Let's set that straight.
You got to go. You got to talk to him. I told you the other day. I was worried about it for a little bit. He came out.
Well, I love my wife to death, and that's the one I think.
Is it the shirts?
I love his shirt.
No, I'm just kidding. I did too. That one's
This was for my bachelor party.
I love that one.
It was my Myrtle Beach, whatever this is, Mizzen in Maine. It's a golf shirt, I think. But that's the one thing that I truly, it sounds so damn cheesy, but I do love about my wife is that she knew it going in. What I am, what I was wanting to do, what I'm currently doing.
That's good.
And she gives me an extremely long, runway, so to speak. Now, there are times where if we're at dinner on a Saturday night, do you have to answer every phone call? Can you hold off for 30 minutes? Sure. That's no big deal. That's a respect thing. But in her mind, the way that she's always told it to me is the early mornings, the late nights, the Saturdays, the Sundays, she goes, well, what's the opposite? What if I was dating someone who was unemployed and was in a bread line? She was like, I see you building something. So I understand that it's going to take more effort and more hours and more nights and more this. And she goes, I don't care. And
Well,
she
good,
has,
man.
for the several years, she's given me a lot of that leeway. Thank God, and if she didn't, we'd have to have a tough conversation of, hey, I'm doing this no matter what.
Yeah.
But she's never had that. To Josh's point, when you do get married, things are different, unfortunately. Because like I was telling him the other day, it's, you want to answer that phone call. You want to stay a little bit later. Well, we already had Taco Tuesday planned. We already had the margarita.
Serious
and then you
question.
go, oh shit, I have a family now.
Yeah.
You got to make their time is your time.
Serious question. Is there a prenup?
We talked about it, and I forgot all about it.
So okay, that's what I need to know.
She told me this was last year. It was when we had got engaged.
You
and
did talk about it.
We did, and she said, "You know what? I don't mind if you want to do a prenup thing. Great. I don't care. In essence, then you just get so busy, and then the wedding day comes, and you go, "Oh shit, did we ever figure that out?" And you didn't. But in my mind, I think a prenup is a great thing, right?
Yeah.
But I do, once you're married and you are involved, then you do kind of have that mentality of, am I setting myself up for failure?
Well, I think too, let's get this straight. It's not like you're worth billions of dollars.
Right.
If you didn't sign that prenup, now she's involved too.
Exactly.
She's committed. Because when you sign that dotted line, she's technically signing that dotted line. That's why I tell Ashley all the time. I was like, I got a lot of debt, but I have a lot of equity.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So we're taking a lot of risk because we didn't grow up rich. And that's why I tell everybody, if you didn't grow up rich, you might as well just continue to risk it all over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And the day you stop is the day you that's where you end up. That's your destination, right? And I have a big goal, so I literally have to take everything it took my 37 years of life to get to and go all in again. And I could go back to zero at 40. I could go back to zero at 45. Because my goal is so big now that I literally just have to continue to push that bag and push that bag all in and all in
Reinvesting
and all in
constantly.
again
Yeah.
and delay that gratification.
Yeah.
That's the biggest deal with having a family is you tell them all these great things that you're doing and you show them the money that business is making and it's not directly impacting your lifestyle at this point. They're like, well, where is all that money?
No, it happens.
It's going back into the business because we're smart. We're putting all of our money back in the business, and we're delaying our gratification, aka our salaries and our distributions and all this other stuff.
But then you see those distribution checks, not me at OFS, but I see them today, and I go, "Oh fuck, we're almost there."
Yeah,
Give me a year.
Yeah,
We're almost there.
That's his second one he's ever got, and they're nice. I got one too, and they're nice.
Yeah,
But it's like, okay, this is why we're doing it.
yeah,
And I see you and your young family, and we've been around each other. I've been your partner a lot longer than I've been Eric's partner.
Yep.
And Eric's finally got his business where it's running, and I see that it's exciting for me as his partner to say, like, dang, I'm working with him on his house budget. His family's about to get a really nice house. You know what I mean? I remember when he showed up with this car that looked like his ex-girlfriend that had she had hail damage all over her face. And he went from that to a jacked up F-150.
That wasn't how the story went.
He
but
bought a hail damaged car and he never got it fixed.
I bought it off
It was
the lot.
embarrassing. That's what he
Listen,
drove when he
listen.
first started here.
That's real
This
life.
hail damaged
That's
car.
real life. And my mom still drives it to this day.
He bought a
gave
Toyota
it to her.
Corolla that was so hail damaged they basically gave it to him. It was brand new though.
Well, that's a testament to Eric, though, is it not? I mean, going through, hey, I know I can't have the shiniest thing today. I will tomorrow, but like I got to sacrifice.
I'm just cheap motherfucker. That's just all there is to it.
Yeah.
I just ride
He
it
is
out.
cheap.
Yeah. I don't
But if you
care.
want to get back, sorry, I'll probably have to answer all these questions.
No,
soon.
you don't have to
No,
answer.
no.
We're just free
You just free
flowing.
flow, man.
But to the genesis of OFS, going way back, I did see the opportunity, and we call it a moonshot. It was a moonshot is what it was. Seeing the opportunity with the shares of Toughbox, knowing that we're building the largest privately owned equipment rental business in this area, part of the Midwest. So anyway, we go to sell, and one of our largest clients at the time, who I had a great relationship with, is Walmart. Well, darn, isn't it terrible to be their best friend? The biggest company on earth, largest retailer. So when we were going to sell, they I'll say his name, it doesn't matter, but I remember it was like it was yesterday. His name was Brian Wallace. He was the store manager at Walmart 168 in Owasso on 96th Street and 169. And he texted me saying, "Hey, we know a lot more now than we did back then, but he said, "Hey, we love your service, but we hate our current facilities maintenance people, landscaping, overnight, power washing, this, that, and the other. Do you do that?" I said, "No way I do." And this was March 2019. Remember, again, no, we don't do that. What are you talking about? I know how to trim my own hedges and mow my own grass. I'm not involved in that business. Well, we kept selling it to what Josh's point was earlier of like, what do you do next? Then that realization hit me of like, I got to get a job, or I need to really try and be a true blue entrepreneur and see what I'm made of. So he asked me again. It was May of 2019 because it was starting to get hot out. And he said, do you do like, I'm asking you again. And I said, of course I do facilities maintenance. I've done it my whole life. Street sweeping, power washing, shoot, I do that in my sleep all the time. You need it? Sure. And he said, yeah. And then that started the whole process of OFS, and we incorporated it in July 2019. We were still on the path to sell Toughbox. It was not a given. But to what Josh said earlier of, there was a moonshot, but where does the money go? Your equity's up, this, that, and the other. When we sold, and we'll save this for the last episode, and I ain't going to tell you what I sold for, but I took some of that and I gave myself one little present. It was a red hot rod truck, which I show him, I'm a car guy, and I put all the rest of the money into OFS because I said, I got to try it. I got to bank on myself. And I had job offers at the time with our former business partners, lucrative offers. And I said, I can't do it. I said, I have to bet on myself this one time, and go alone. Well, Josh was my partner, so go.
We about had a third partner.
We did.
We dodged a bullet.
We almost had a third partner who was not
Who was that?
interested. Well, one of your former business partners, I'll just say that.
Oh,
So, long story short, the company was built on Walmart, and I got really good at it pretty quick. I would say that the first year was a nightmare. It was broken bones and blood and sweating and waking up at 4 a.m. and dragging. You go from a accountant, controller, or whatever, and you had helped assist and became an owner of a business, to now you're back to square one. And you're back to square one of something you don't know jack shit about. Sorry, my language, but we bought the trailers, we put paper cash into the business, and we bought all this equipment. I was hiring guys in Quick Trip parking lots, and I was hiring their brothers and their cousin and their mom, and I didn't know what I was doing, and we ended up with a lot more business day one than we had budgeted for, and it was just sort of like, okay, here it is, hold on, and the first year was insane.
Well, we bought all this equipment, and Walmart was like, "Yeah, these contracts are coming. These contracts are coming. These contracts are coming." And guess what didn't come?
Contracts.
The contracts. I was like, "John, we got to figure this out real quick."
Yeah.
You turned down job offers. I'm injecting money in this. You're injecting money in this. I was like, let's go get some other stuff. So we went out and got some of these other business lines going, and Walmart finally came around. Like, here you go. And it took us about a year to get those implemented.
It really did.
It was nerve wracking because
starting from
Walmart doesn't move fast.
No,
Still to this day.
yeah, they don't.
So let's catch everybody up one more time. So you started when you were young, you did the work life, you met somebody, positioned yourself, got to the next point. They gave you they sold you some shares that you leveraged through another guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
In 2 years' time you quadrupled it or whatever, right? And then you take all that and now you're going down again. You're like, let's ride or die, baby. We're trying it again on my own. So then you're in business with OFS. Walmart's came around. You're starting to get your motion flowing, and then you went from just basically doing Walmart stuff to what all do you do now?
So we started, the whole thing was built on commercial and retail. It's one thing that I'm really good at, oddly enough, besides storage containers, which that's a whole different road we can go down. An 8x40 container, for some reason, gets me going. I love them. You can ask me any goddamn question about containers, I get it. But now I got really good on the other side. So kind of fast track today, we're almost 4 years later in the business, and we've gone through the highs and the lows and some ups and some downs, and now we're going through another growth expansion. Now we're fully involved in the landscape business and facilities maintenance. Facilities maintenance took a little bit longer, but hiring the right people to put around me, starting with another guy that we went to high school with, that was really more adept on the residential side and the lawn care. So outside of doing big box stuff and just mowing, now we have about 8 different services that we offer through OFS, from mowing your lawn to the weed control and fertilization to landscaping, hardscaping, landscape lighting, designing, building it, maintaining it, mosquito control, to then, the wintertime projects too, Christmas lights, hardscapes. We don't do a lot of leaf removal, things of that nature. And those are things that it took a lot of time to learn, and I was up early, late and all that. But when you're in a totally new industry, you don't know what you don't know. And Eric, you probably can attest to that. When you start with toilets, then you move into dumpsters, and then you move into other items. So, it took my second operations manager that said, hey, in the winter, we should do Christmas lights. Because at my last job, we did a lot, and it's a good fourth quarter boost. So in 2020, we had no wintertime work. So I laid all my guys off. They came back because they were loyal. I had an operations manager at the time that was about a screwball and a half. Josh remembers him.
What was that?
Chuck?
Oh, is that the one with the toupee?
He may have worn a toupee. He had the fake teeth and the
he had black hair, like jet black hair. He looked like the guy off Matilda.
Yeah.
The used car salesman.
He did. He's dead. So it's kind of fucked up to say, but hey, who's gonna hear it now? But
Sorry, Chuck.
I'd say rest in peace, but the goddamn guy stole from both Eric and I. So I don't know where he's at, but he'd go fuck himself back then. And I hate to say it because it's screwed up, but
funny.
He did. He stole everything we had.
He made a car payment on one of your checkbooks, and he made utility
now.
payments on my checkbook. And at any rate, when I moved into the second year, which was 2020, we took the winter off and we were all kind of helping each other out. But, the growth of the company has been exponential and it's been great. But you learn a lot along the way. In 2021, when we moved into our wintertime services, not only snow removal, but Christmas lights, we had 14 paying jobs that year. And we had 2 non-paying jobs, Josh, his house and my house, because that was an owner benefit. Year 2, we go into it, we have 55 paying jobs. So you almost grow by multiple, quadruple. Last year we did, I think, 92 reinstalls and new sales. So it's one of those things that what services we offer now is about everything. And we continue to try and grow every business line. The one big challenge in this business is when you do offer every line and you try and offer it day one, is how do you manage every single business line? How do you grow it? How do you maintain it? All that sort of stuff, and try and create net positive income across the board. It's very challenging. A lot of people, they grow into their services over time. We did not. We tried to jump into it, and they've, for the most part, proven very profitable and great. But sometimes it is challenging of I go from a tough box, you have one product. That's it. Now it comes in different sizes and colors and heights and things of that nature, and you might sell it differently. You might at least own it, rent it, whatever.
It
Now
can't die.
Yeah, exactly.
Hmm.
And then you move into something where you have truly multiple services and multiple people, and I got to make sure and keep up with my certifications over here and make sure that we're doing the fertilizer right. Then I got to make sure the mowing is correct and the overnight street sweeping. So there's a whole ton that you're managing all the time that has been one of the biggest challenges in my career.
Mm-hmm. Well,
What is the, like right now, 2024 of June, what is the biggest stress you got going on right now? You're in the heart of season. You're growing like crazy.
The biggest stress right now, and being over 4 years into it, is we're going through a cash crunch because we're growing so big. And that's one thing that we've gone through a little bit before, but we're going through it on an exponential scale right now. So going through that cash crunch and being so stressed out all the time. And
How stressed?
me, I'll tell you, I told you personally, but I'll tell Eric here. I've only been stressed like this one other time in my life, and it was with Tough Box, but it was way different.
Mm-hmm.
But so stressed where I'm literally waking up and I threw up multiple times. That's how stressed out I am.
it's a lot.
Yeah,
I never did that.
it's
Maybe I'm just
different.
stupid.
I've
I
had
don't know.
my Apple Watch say, hey, your resting heartbeats through the roof, this, that, and the other over the years. And sometimes when things are going good, you kind of forget. You don't forget, but you have to always constantly remind yourself of how to do it when you were broke. And that's the tough thing. And so now we're going through a cash crunch because we're growing so much, and we just have to recapitalize the company, which will work out. We will make it work out, and because we see the bigs and how it operates, but I've never experienced that level of stress in my life.
Yeah.
And, again, putting on that smile and going home and having your dinners and your cookouts and going, my brain's out here.
I'm eating steak. I should be eating freaking.
How's work going?
Kraft.
Going great.
Yeah.
Macaroni and cheese.
Yeah, you're boiling ramen noodles, but you're grilling on your Blackstone grilling. But your whole one of the biggest challenges is how do you manage that stress?
Yeah.
And that's tremendously tough
Yeah.
because you have to do the best you can in your family life, in your extended, immediate, or whatever, to be present.
And only not only that, in your work life too. You
Yeah.
can't just come to work just stressing everybody else out because
Yeah.
people feed off the leaders.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I think it's important, and I'm glad you kind of started on this little path because when we have people that come on here, especially with stories like yours, well, I like to ask them a couple questions that are, I think, important for the people who are watching to hear. Like, if you were just starting today as an entrepreneur and wanting to make that next step, what advice would you give them
to landscape or just in general?
in general?
I would tell anybody, what Josh said is perfect, and everybody tells you there's no good time to start it. But if you have that inkling, if you think that you're worth more than what you're doing, or you think you have a bigger skill set,
Mm-hmm.
jump all in and don't have a backup plan. I know when you say things like that, it sounds cheesy saying it's cheesy, but it's the truth.
Yeah.
Don't go into opening a landscape business or a dumpster business and go, what's my backup constantly? Because if you do have that backup, you're not going to focus on what this is and making it right.
I mean,
so
there's probably a lot of truth to that, John. I like the way you put that.
So any advice I would give to a new entrepreneur is if you really have that desire to own your own thing or be a part of it or have a group or whatever, don't have a backup plan. Jump in, go for it, knowing that
All in.
go all in. The American dream, it's alive and well. We know that, they can be great if you make them great, but if you have a backup plan and you always have something in the back of your mind, you're never going to put yourself all into what your passion is. So my advice to entrepreneurs, they all start different. There's no good time. Grow them slow, grow them fast, make those mistakes, but be willing to pivot. But my ultimate number one is jump in with both feet and don't have a backup plan.
Okay. Next question. Let's flip that. If you're getting into the facility services business, what is your advice for any entrepreneurs? That are
Oh
looking to do
God.
that?
When I jumped into this, I would say do your research. Do as much as you can, and I say that nowadays, especially with young entrepreneurs or even people that are older that want to start a business in 2024 or in the coming years, there are so many tools that you have at your exposure that really come down to these two things, your thumbs. It's your phone, right? So I would say if you're going into something else and you want to be an entrepreneur, I would do all the research you can. There is a certain level of just jump and do it, but if you have there's so much free stuff. YouTube, Google, whatever it is, Facebook groups where you can network with people and ask them, what trials and tribulations did you go through? So when I start day one, I can maybe try to eliminate those. So I would say doing as much research as you possibly can is, and again, that might sound cheesy too, but it's the best thing to give you a leg up in today's day and age.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, you've living it and breathing it, and so you'd be a perfect person to answer those kind of questions, right?
I mean,
So
it's
I
not
love
easy.
it. It's not easy, and I hope my story and his story and your story, like I don't know,
anybody's story that's made
it's
it.
it's
is
never easy.
It
So
don't matter if you did get a pot full of money. Those guys usually, a lot of people get a big head start, right? They never went through the grind. They lose it all. Right?
Yeah.
'Cause they don't know how to grind it out. But when you start from the ground up and you go through this trial, this cycle you're going through, right? Heavy growth, need more capital. Where do I get the capital? Margins aren't as good as they need to be. Banks are like, you're kind of high risk. So the only way you get capital is you either go raise it outside or you inject it internally, right? Hand you the financials. You're like, oh man, I don't think I'd invest in this company right now. It's running at 5%. We need to change. You don't get the whole picture. Him and I, we get it. But it's nice to have that perspective. And when you never went through that grind, you don't know when you are handed a big company and you get handed a golden egg. And you do have to go through that grind. You might not have that wherewithal like we do here.
I agree.
And most people do that start from the ground up.
Yep.
You're so used to getting beat down every day that when you do go through a grind, it's just like a little bit tougher of a fight. You got an opponent against you that can fight today.
It's fun sometimes. Yeah,
And
you've been beaten down
dude,
so many
it just
times.
makes
You're
you
like,
tough.
yeah,
Well,
It makes you tough.
every single person at this table has experienced it. You importantly, or most importantly, Josh, because you started with nothing and you had a young family and this, that, and the other, and you had to grind and build it up. And it sounds cheesy, and we are going through things right now at OFS, but through a positive. If we were having to go through a cash crunch in reverse, going, we don't have enough work, we have too much work to take on. Then you would question a whole different way.
Yep.
But one cheesy thing, my third cheesy thing that I'll say, is that the whole different level of stress now has been difficult, but there's a way through it. The way out, in my mind, is the way through. But one thing you have to ask yourself as an entrepreneur, because you'll always doubt yourself, because all you do is you get beat down 24/7. You're getting beat down. You have a smile on your face, but you're getting beat down. One thing I asked myself, recently and even with Tough Box, is what happens when things start going right?
Oh, I know.
When things start going right, that adds a whole other level of stress, because you go, wait, people are calling me. They're banking on my brand. Now we're growing. Now I have to either reinvest, grow a little bit slower. But when you ask yourself what happens when things go right, it's a good question to ask, but it's also a different mindset. It's very weird when you go, wait, things are kind of clicking and they're working and we're getting all these calls and things of that nature. Now we got to react to the market, our customers.
when they're going right, you try to figure out how to keep it there.
Yes.
Well,
as fast as
telling
you
Ashley
can.
The other day, I was like sitting there in bed. I was like, I have the most amount of wealth I've ever had in my entire life, right? More than I ever thought I'd have, and I feel broker today than I ever have felt.
It's because you double and double and double and double.
I'm like, holy crap! I have more money. I got more cash flow positives. Some I'm starting up. Some are not doing good. Some are doing great. You know what I mean? And it's like you get money in that goes out. You start new ideas. Blah blah blah. And I have more wealth today and more stress today than I've ever had, and I feel broker than I've ever had.
Yeah, we were talking about that the other day about how
It's just crazy the mindset.
how
of
on
that.
paper I'm worth multiple millions of dollars on paper, right? So it could be considered a millionaire, but just like you are probably today, and we know you are, right? But at the end of the day, is that you can still have limited cash and be
Yeah.
and be an entrepreneur and be making it and be considered wealthy, right?
You look at your personal financial statement, you're like, where the hell is all that?
Yeah. So it's kind of interesting. It's kind of an interesting thing, right?
And it's
like,
true. And we all have to do it every year is fill out your personal financial statement for the bank to re-up, whatever you have to re-up. But Josh, Carly, you hit it on the head. I don't feel any better off than I did when I was an employee in 2016. I had bought a house, I had a truck and things of that nature. I don't feel any better off. You're grinding so much because you're reinvesting all the time and this, that, and the other. You're better off, but you feel broke.
You feel
You
broke.
kind of go, well, holy crap, what do I have to show for all this? There's some things to show for it, but when you're reinvesting constantly, it feels like, when is this going to hit? It will hit.
Yeah.
It's just, you have to, if you don't have that mindset of it's going to hit, you almost just want to give up.
I'll
But
tell you, sorry to interrupt you. Well, you hit something that hit a chord with me. So we're always talking about, and I'm sure you've heard this because he's famous for it.
Here we go.
He's always like, we're just pulling that bow and arrow back, man. Just pulling
I
it.
just gave that other guy today. I
Just
gave him.
pulling it back, right? And as soon as I release that thing, it's gonna get wild, right?
Yes, you're gonna.
Because you're
It's-
reinvesting
it's-
and growing, and then your net profit, your EBIT is higher, and you're getting higher multiples, and your money is just getting compounded and compounded. It's not real yet; it's on paper, right? It doesn't get real till that day somebody comes in there and they sign that big fat check, and then you're like, "Oh shit, yeah."
It only gets real one time a year
Yeah.
when you're broke and your accountant says you owe the government money.
Oh yeah. I hate
They're
that.
like, "How
That's
that-
happened to me
What?
personally.
What? I owe the government money. I had no money in my bank account." They're like, "Yeah, just because you just reinvested it." I'm like, "Okay, well, let's depreciate this stuff real quick."
Yeah.
And thank you, Biden, for really screwing that up. 60% depreciation.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
We were
It's not-
banking on that, bro.
We need the 100% bonus depreciation, you
Yeah.
idiot.
Like millions
But,
of others just like us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you just delay that gratification as long as you can, and the day that you don't, that's kind of your destination.
Yeah.
Now you can kind of trickle that gratification in, like we're doing right now on your side, where you kind of like, here's a pop, here's a pop, but here's a kicker with that. Once you level up on lifestyle, it's very hard to level down. Once you get used to leveling up and living in that house and driving that little bit nicer
I
car,
bet.
and
It just makes me push harder, man.
yeah, so I always say delay delay as long as you can, because once you hit that destination, you're gonna be like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
and everything's gonna be exciting. You know what I mean? You go live in your house to what you're going into now, and then you're not driving the cars that you were driving previously because you worked hard for it, and that's what the whole point of it is.
2012 held deemed Toyota Corolla.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that, but delay your gratification. Put your money back in your company. Secure your future. You know
For
what I mean?
sure.
And then when you do that, you're going to have something that nobody else has. While all your other friends are living lifestyles they can't afford, right? They're driving those nice cars and living in those big houses and putting their vacations on their credit card, and they show up in these fancy clothes and perfectly clean shoes, and they show up with a smile on their face, and they got 3 weeks of vacation, and they got a fancy business card with a title, and you're showing up and your hair's falling out, you got gray hair over here, your car's dirty, and you're stressed out to the max, and you show up halfway drunk to alleviate some stress, and you're like, man, that guy has a life right there. But I guarantee what's going on right now in my life, people are like, how do you afford to do all that? Well, they don't realize, they only see the end result at 37 right now.
right.
They don't
They
understand
didn't
that. I
see
didn't take a
22.
vacation for the first 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
You know, they don't understand that I was working 80 hours and still do. When they're at home at 5 and they call me like, hey, you want to come over and have a beer? Or, hey, man, we're hitting Man's Night Golf Country Club that I belong to, too, at 3:30. And I'm like, it's Thursday at 3:30. I can't leave here.
No, I know.
I'm doing a podcast at 5:24.
That's right.
And I've already got 4 texts because it's Man's Night at Patriot Golf Club.
Yeah.
Oh, it is Thursday. Same thing right here. You hit the nail on the head. The grind to get there, there is a level of comfort that you have being in that W-2, and we talk about it all the time. And Eric, you've been there. The grind, they'll never understand it, but it's one thing that does pay off. Eric, I'm sure I haven't listened to every podcast, but if people don't
Are
know
you a
it,
subscriber?
I should. I follow you on Facebook. Is
Okay.
that what? Or is it on YouTube?
It's on YouTube
Yeah.
and Facebook and TikTok
Oh,
and Instagram.
do we still have a TikTok in America? I don't know. Does it track?
I mean, I think
But-
that happened. I'm pretty sure.
But to that point, everybody here has gone through it. Josh has went through it way worse. But Eric, you did too. You had your own business, and I've known you for a long time, and you worked, what was it, 90 straight days with on call cleaning toilets, and Thomas cleaned them overnight. It was the same, not the same exact thing, but with OFS, you start year one. I did the whole year, paid myself $0, and was hauling trailers and mowing things and weed eating 10 miles of Walmart edges a day, sweating and bleeding into my boots and stuff. And that grind, that it's going to pay off. But people at the end, they see the white and red truck, they see the green, all trucks and trailers, and they go, oh, he must have got lucky. Kind of like they did with Josh.
Yeah,
They
do
go,
that all
oh,
the time.
how,
I know, I get
it's only been 3 or 4
Like,
years.
smile. You're like, yeah.
They're
They
like, so did you, were you born in this?
Exactly.
Like, I had a banker the other day. I was like, so, where did you get your money? I'm like, what do you mean where I got my money?
The sweat off your back.
I freaking work my ass off for this.
Yeah.
I show up every day, all day. There's not anybody that knows me. My phone's on 24/7.
Yeah.
I'll be on a ski slope like, hey, like skiing with one hand. You know what I mean? Probably gonna kill myself. Answering my phone, like, do it. Boom.
Well, that's the point. Is that there are percentages out there and there's statistics and all that stuff, but there's not many other three guys like the three guys sitting here today. Like
Well, most people 1%ers, and most people will never get there.
right.
There's 99% of people that will never be where you and I are.
Well, to that point, the grind, getting through it. Like there are people, to your point, that were born with a silver spoon, and or maybe they like people in our past who lucked into a family business and they just said, you can have this ownership, just run it, or whatever the case may be. But to get there and truly know that grind, very little people do. Like I said, at the end of the day, or years later, they see the net result or a net result, and they see shiny trucks with
And then you're
wheels.
an
and they
overnight success.
Well,
then they say you got lucky, and you go, well, where were you year one when I broke my toe at a Walmart, and then I taped it up in the truck because you can't let you guys see it down. Put tape around it to my good toe, ran back up the hill to the Burger King with a backpack blower on my back, and was blowing grass off. You can't be a bitch.
I never heard that.
Yeah, and it's true. The guys that still work there, I broke my middle toe, and they said, "Oh, Jefe, boss,
Jefe.
Padron, whatever." They said, "Oh my God, we'll shut." I said, "We ain't shutting down. We have no time to shut down." I took my shoe off. I got in the truck. I had a little med kit, that I probably bought at a Walmart. I took the
safety
tape.
guy know, bro.
Yeah, nowadays.
We're joking.
Yeah.
I taped it as tight as I could to my good toe and stopped the bleeding. I put a Band-Aid on it, and with the tape, put the shoe back on and ran up the hill. I said, I got to be the toughest guy out here. But to that point, all that aside, the sacrifice that you do go through, people don't see.
No, all they see is the end result, what you have now. They didn't know that you'd been doing this I've been telling people, I'm 37 now.
Yeah.
I've been doing this since I was 23.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Think about that. That's like 14 years.
Yeah.
You hear somebody that's been doing a career for 20 years, like, that guy's old. I've
Yeah.
been doing the same shit, literally, dealing with the same shit for 13, 14 years. Solid. Yeah. Same grind. Not put any less hours in. I'm putting more hours in right now than I've ever put in my entire life.
Which is crazy.
And I'm not doing physical labor anymore. But I wake up, Alex sees me, I don't ever leave the room once I go in there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Well, guys, to round this out, in my perspective, we talk about entrepreneurship, and there's not a lot of people who do it. A lot of people fail, right? But and I'll speak for myself, but it feels like the American system just does not support what we're trying to do. You know what I'm saying? They don't teach you in the schools. They don't do nothing like that. They want to keep you in the system. So
I 100% agree.
You know what I mean?
We talk about that all the time.
I know we talk about it all the
They
time.
don't teach you what a 401k is, but they expect you to put money in a 401k.
You know how to balance your checkbook when you're going to be an adult. So, anyways, I don't want to ramble, but John, we appreciate you coming on.
Public education.
Public education, yeah. I have a public education just like you. But, man, we appreciate you coming on and sharing your story. It was a really cool story. And like I said, I agree. And I think entrepreneurship is hard, right? You surround yourself with like-minded people and have common goals to grow and learn, and only good things can happen, man. So
Yeah, absolutely.
you've done a
Thank you
great
guys for
job.
having me on. It was great, and story's not over yet.
Hell no.
Keep
pushing
grinding.
it.
To everybody out there listening, if you want to get into it, great. If you don't, that's great too. But be willing to push it. Be willing to get uncomfortable, and you can realize the American dream. You can. It's tough. Sorry, I'm rambling at this point.
No.
There is no easy side of business ownership. People say, "Well, you're your own boss. You can do whatever you want." No, you're not. Your customer's your boss. Your employee's your boss. Everybody. So, but if you have the willingness and the fortitude to put that grind and that time in, it's well worth it. You guys know it. I know it. So if you're out there and you do have a willingness to do it, I would say go for it. If you have a dream, chase it.
Yep. And I'll end it on this. You know what my American dream is? My American dream is to have 1 million subscribers by the end of the year 2024.
Like
so
and
if
subscribe.
you're listening, okay,
Like, subscribe, subscribe.
and subscribe and share it to your girlfriends or your boyfriends or whatever.
We
right?
won't hit on them. We're married.
We're married.
Oh, we'll hit on them. We can't go the full distance. Like and subscribe.
Keyboard warrior it. Got it.
I got one the other day.
Don't have
I
your
was-
girlfriend subscribe because they're going to fall in love with us. So do that yourself. If not, your girl's fucked because she's going to fall in love with JR over here.
Oh God. Here we go.
Hey, let's cut him off.
Cut him out. Nope. Thank you.
Thanks.